Hey guys, so this week I've been playing Kerbal Space Program, which is a game that's not even finished yet. Oh, it was released on Steam's Early Access program, but it's been around for a couple of years now. But is it worth getting? Even though it's not done yet and they're still adding stuff, is it worth you spending your money on it? Well, here is my opinion. Nowadays, it's not uncommon in the indie game scene for a developer to actually sell their game while they're still in the middle of making it. I remember buying Minecraft like 2 years before they even released it out of its beta. All it really means is that as you're playing the game, the developer is actively adding content to the game. It's kind of like DLC that you don't have to pay for. The concept of Kerbal Space Program is easy enough to grasp. You design a spacecraft out of a multitude of rocket parts the game has available, and then you launch said spacecraft into space and off to distant moons and planets. It sounds easy enough, but the reality is not quite so easy. That's because the game uses real rocket science and physics behind it. There's actually real math involved in the way that everything works, but thankfully you don't have to know any of it. When designing your rocket, you have to consider things like how heavy your craft is and how much fuel and how much thrust you're going to need to actually break orbit. And if by some miracle you manage to get into orbit, will you have enough fuel to actually go anywhere? The game involves a lot of trial and error. You spend your first few launches just watching your rocket like explode on the launch pad or, burn up in the atmosphere before you can actually get into a stable orbit. But with practice, you start to learn the ins and outs of designing your rockets and getting it into space, and then you can attempt more challenging feats. This is not a game about instant gratification. This is a game about slowly learning the mechanics and gaining and refining actual skill at how you play. You fail over and over again, but it isn't really a punishment. Every crash is a learning experience, and it makes the first time you get an astronaut on the moon like that much more satisfying. Even if they're kind of stranded there because, you crash landed. But look at their faces. They seem perfectly content to starve to death on the moon. The game also has a huge community of people behind it. You can go to their forums and find a bunch of pre-built ships from players just like you, and also advice on how to reach a certain planet or how to design your rocket to do a certain thing. There's even a mod community where people are adding their own different rocket parts to the game. Although I would suggest that you stay away from the autopilot mods until you really start to get the hang of the game, because it does take some of the satisfaction when you can just program a rocket to go to the moon and you don't have to touch anything. So who is this game for, really? Well, if you always dreamed about joining NASA someday and exploring the solar system but kind of hated school, then, this game's for you. And if you're the kind of person who built model rockets as a kid and owns an adult-sized spacesuit, well, this game's probably for you. It fulfills a fantasy of space travel that I've always had. Well, apart from, having sex with moon babes. But the game is in beta, so that's probably a feature that they're working on. I'm basically obsessed with this game. I've sunk so much time into it. Like, every time I sit down to play for 30 minutes or whatever, 4 hours goes by. It's nuts. I don't know if I can express, fully how much I'm in love with this game. I've literally had a hard time doing this video because it involved me not playing Kerbal Space Program. That's how much I enjoy this game. I think it's totally worth the 20 bucks or whatever. Just get this game if you're into space travel like I am. Just get it. It's amazing.